disorganized, inaccurate, and sexist. James Owen's closing argument was a complete disaster. Let's talk about why and have a little rant. Hey everybody, it's Chris from Guilty Words, where we unravel crime one word at a time. We've spent a lot of time on the Sarah Boone case, and in James Owen's closing arguments on Friday, I found myself getting incredibly frustrated and upset, and I wanted to take a little time to process before I did a video about it. But as I rewatched it, I still got upset, and let me explain why. I give Owens credit. He had an incredibly difficult job to do. I'm sure he was completely exhausted by the time final closings came. However, he did have two other lawyers and assistants to help him. Not everything that happened in that closing argument can be put down to exhaustion. Let's talk about, first, the total disorganization of it, and then we'll talk about the worst part, which was the sexism. He begins with this folksy introduction of himself as this guy from a small town that's separated from another small town by a Walmart, and leaving everyone wondering, what the heck are you talking about? This sort of connect with the jury like an Andy Griffith Matlock should have been done in the beginning if you were going to do it. At this point, nobody cares. Jay even objects on relevance. Same question we were all asking. He also does a great job at alienating the jury by saying, I took lots of notes and I'm going to take my time with this closing. It's late in the afternoon. The jury has just been told they may stay there till 10 o'clock that night. Everyone is tired, but you're going to take your time and shuffle through this huge binder of loose notes. That's not a way to endear yourself to a tired jury. Not only that, he lost his notes 3 times, where he wanted to read something and he couldn't find it, and he's flipping through, and he's saying, I want to get this right because it's so important about a quote that the prosecution had made, and he still can't find it, so he has to paraphrase. Now, all through the trial, we've seen him stumble over this kind of thing. It's driven the prosecution absolutely bananas when he sends things at the last minute or doesn't do what he's supposed to do. It's even driven Judge Cranick crazy when Judge Cranick keeps saying, what's your legal objection? What's the legal basis? But to the jury, they hadn't seen all that stuff that happened when they were out of the room. So this might have been a little bit more of a surprise to them to see him stumbling around losing notes, and not a good surprise. Instead of having a cohesive point-by-point argument, he would flip through his notebook, he would see something that caught his eye, and he would say it. And because of that, it became a jumbled mess. We went from a quote from an expert to something the neighbors said to some random piece of evidence to something Sarah said. It was whatever he happened to come across in his pile of notes. He had this one big cardboard display, which also looked really old school, and the forensic psychologist's name was blacked out. And I found that really interesting because isn't it your own expert? Why wouldn't you want to put that name on there? But also, like I mentioned, the quotes were random as well. He would either not be able to find them or he would bring them in at odd times when it occurred to him. And he read a lot of definitions about what battered spouse syndrome was, what PTSD was, but not a lot of addressing of the evidence directly. His examples of PTSD were actually offensive, I found. To compare what Sarah did and what she went through with a war veteran or a policeman in a life and death situation was not a good parallel at all. He even said at one point, I have some examples that may or may not line up. Why are you giving a jury examples that may not line up? He also started talking about time healing, and he went on this for a while and eventually circled it back to the idea that PTSD is healed by time. People with PTSD, eventually when they get away from it, time heals it, which is total nonsense. Time doesn't heal all wounds, PTSD or others. And then he went on to say Sarah never had that time away from George. So she never got a chance to heal. Doesn't fit. Once again, he talks about Sarah as vulnerable, which is very hard to reconcile with the evidence, and victim blaming. He says at one point that George Torres was to blame for Sarah Boone's mental state. No, he wasn't. Sarah was to blame for Sarah's mental state, not George. Not that George was a saint either. They were incredibly toxic. Probably the thing that bothers me the most about James Owen's closing is his sexism. He would probably argue he wasn't being sexist. But let's listen to a couple clips, because I'm telling you, I don't know what decade he's living in, but he needs, to use an old-fashioned word he would understand, a schooling about his attitudes.
Y'all know me, I'm James Owens, along with Tony Henderson and the girls. Now you know why we're here. Little boys learn early on that girls are different. You do not put your hands on a girl. You can't wrestle with them, you can't punch them, you can't kick them. You can't treat women that way. When you become adults, I don't care what she does to you. I don't care what she says to you. If she gets in your face, whatever she does, you do not have a right to hit a woman. No, sir. You know, this ain't the 1900s, this is 2024.
In Owen's rambling beginning, he introduces his team, and he names the two lawyers that are with him, and then says, and the girls. They aren't girls. First of all, they deserve to be named because they've been supporting you throughout this whole thing. And second of all, they're young professional women, not girls. That's dismissive and demeaning. They are women, professional women, Mr. Owens. But he wasn't done yet. He says at one point, Sarah didn't have a father to protect her. Why would she need a father to protect her? A big male? What was her father supposed to do? Punch George in the nose? She didn't have a father? Well, okay, fine. She had an older brother in the army. Was he supposed to come over and, like, beat somebody up? What planet are you living on? Sarah didn't need protecting. She needed help. She needed rehab. She needed counseling. She needed a lot of things. But she didn't need a big, strong male to come and protect her. She needed to take care of herself and get her life together. And she was so far out of control and unwilling to do that, that somebody else died instead. As if that wasn't enough, I have been trying to give Owens the benefit of the doubt with this whole presentation of Sarah as soft and vulnerable and meek and sheltered and all that garbage that he spewed out in the opening statements. Because I thought, okay, he's got to try and make a very unsympathetic woman sympathetic. But now I'm beginning to wonder if he just is incapable of realizing how human beings, male or female, can do some horrible things. This idea of the delicate lady and the tough male should have gone out in the 1950s. Why is it here? Does he expect her brother and father to hold a duel with George? He goes on with the absolutely astounding statement about little boys learn early on that girls are different. Please tell me, Mr. Privileged White Man, how are girls different? I'm actually going to read the quotes of what he said, so excuse me if I'm not looking right at you, but little boys learn early that girls are different. You do not put your hands on a girl. You can't wrestle with them, you can't punch them, you can't kick them, you can't treat women that way. Oh, but boys are supposed to kick and punch each other? What are you talking about? It's not a matter of treating women that way. It's a matter of treating anyone that way. You are supposed to treat people with respect, not because they're female, but because they're human. This idea of rough and tumble little boys and dainty little china teacup girls is ridiculous. We're supposed to look at each other as people, not stereotypes, especially condescending stereotypes. Oh, but it's not just boys and girls. When you become adults, I don't care what she does to you. I don't care what she says to you. If she gets in your face, whatever she does, you do not have the right to hit a woman. No, sir. And later, this ain't the 1900s. This is 2024. Yeah, it is. And listen to yourself, Mr. Owens. It's not a matter of what she does. It's a matter of what anyone does. You're not supposed to put your hands on someone. You're not supposed to strike them, except in self-defense. This picture of the man having to stand back and practice self-control while a shrew berates him is so out of line. I don't care what she does to you. Well, how about the first thing is she shouldn't be acting that way. And the second thing is physical violence isn't the answer, no matter how either side is acting. But to sit there and say, be a man, don't hit this woman. No, be a human being with some self-control and some emotional intelligence. Try that instead. This isn't the 1900s, this is 2024. Yes, it is. And these stereotypes that you're promoting and this endemic sexism in your argument needs to go away. It was offensive. Sarah Boone didn't need protection. She needed help, which she chose not to get. But please stop with this alpha male and weak female garbage that you're spewing. It didn't help your argument, especially when you're talking about a woman who is vicious and calculating. Didn't help it, Mr. Owens. So what conclusions can we draw? Spend some time on your closing argument, organize it, address the facts and the issues. Don't ramble around through a bunch of notes, making disconnected statements about what experts said, what Sarah said, what you think some testimony was, but you can't quite remember. Get your act together before you get up there. And the other thing is, look around, because girls are 7 or 8 years old. They're not professional people in their 20s, and they're not your 40-something-year-old client. And stop thinking in terms of male and female and just start thinking in terms of general humanity and the way we treat each other without all your endemic sexism about, you don't touch a girl, you can punch a boy or kick a boy or whatever, because that's what boys do. Not okay. And I'm so glad the jury didn't buy it. Thank you for taking the time today to listen to my little rant. I really appreciate it. If you've liked this content and want to see more, of course, we'd welcome your subscription very much. And until we meet again in the next video, please use your words more wisely and well than Mr. Owens did. And let's use them to build each other up, not take each other down the way Sarah did. Till I see you again, take care.